My name is Sasha Diamond, and the PAD taught me bravery.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach design in the Performing Arts Department at Washington University in St. Louis. I am just so delighted to share with you an interview with Sasha Diamond. Proud alum Sasha Diamond has had recurring roles on NCIS New Orleans and Tommy. She's also had guest starring roles on Bull, New Amsterdam, Magnum PI, and Blind Spot. She's also got a very rich theater career, and to top it all off, she's an amazing photographer as well. We get into a little bit of discussion about that. More than that, I think we really touch on the genesis and of being courageous in the creative arts. And I really want to share this amazing wisdom that Sasha shares with you all. So with that, please enjoy. My guest today is Sasha Diamond. I am so happy to have Sasha Diamond on the podcast. She comes equipped, by the way, with a highly professional microphone, which I am just over the moon about. So, Sasha, thank you so much for joining the PAD podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
It's so great to chat with you. First of all, where are you these days? How are things going?
Things are going. I'm in New York. I'm in New York City. I live in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Pretty much it.
Nice. I'm really excited to talk to you about, not just your stellar sort of background in theater and TV and film, and at least if those that have seen the audio or video clips of this podcast know that I'm sort of well gray in the in the facial hair, but you've not been, I would think, in the industry all that long, but your career has just taken off, which is really exciting to see. So I'm just so delighted to chat with you on the podcast about that. But you're also a multidisciplinary artist. You're also a photographer, all that kind of great stuff. So I'm very happy that you've decided to join the podcast. And I guess, should we start, if you don't mind, with the beginning?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
Start with, like how you found your way to WashU, maybe why you chose WashU and your study while at WashU.
Yeah. So I grew up on the East Coast, and so WashU was pretty far out into the West for me. I wasn't looking really much farther. So that was the absolute most farthest west I was going to go. But I looked because both my parents went to WashU. They actually went to the architecture school. My mom went for undergrad and for grad, and my dad went for grad, and that's where they met.
Nice.
So
nice.
I looked, just kind of, excited to check that box. And then when I got there, it was so welcoming and lovely. And yeah, I think I can't remember if it was before I got in or after I got in, but I had one of those like pre-orientation. I think I was a prospective student, and I like stayed with some upperclassmen who were so welcoming and lovely. And they just like welcomed me to their dorm, and I stayed overnight and just like kind of got a feel. And the kindness and the warmth was so unique to WashU that I was like, okay, I think this is it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I didn't know your folks went to WashU. As at architecture majors, I'm often, as a design professor, the architecture majors make great set designers. I'm usually like down there almost as if I'm selling, I don't know, some sort of strange medicine. I'm like, would you like to design something where the roof can float? Like, and they're like, what is this magic you speak of? I'm like, it's theater design, So I don't literally do that, but sometimes I feel like that's the case. I'm always finding great, talented students down there at the Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts, which, by the way, between us and everyone listening to this, needs a shorter name. I'm always
it's called the Fox. Isn't there a Fox? There is a Fox.
When I directed Beyond Boundaries, they said it's the Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a mouthful. Okay,
that's very long.
Exactly. So it was because of your folks that you kind of were first turned on to WashU, and then you decided to come here. And then what did you study while you were here? Like, wasn't specifically a drama major, is that right?
Yeah, I ended up studying comparative arts, which is a subset of comparative literature. So it was kind of the best major to hold all of my interests, which were literary and acting classes and creative writing classes and French. And I got to study abroad in France. And so it all kind of put it together in a way that like housed the many things that I was interested in at the time.
Got it. And so you, in a sense, was that the draw to WashU specifically, as opposed to, for example, a highly specialized conservatory program in acting? Like, you liked the idea that there was this interdisciplinary menu to choose from. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I think a lot of the colleges I looked at were liberal arts, so it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily, and I didn't know about comparative arts when I was looking at schools. So I happened to get lucky and like meet the right people who are like, oh, there's this major. Like you can just use this.
Just use this. I
Just use
like that.
this. But my mom was the kind of person who growing up she'd like walk me along a wall. If there was a high wall that I was like practicing walking on when I was a kid, she'd be like, you just have to know which way you're gonna fall. So you can walk
Oh,
on this very high wall, but you have to know. So in the same sense, she was like, you can I encourage any artistic pursuit that you have, especially being an architect. I think she had a kinship towards that. But she
sure.
was like, you have to know where you're gonna fall. You have to be studying things. You have to keep your options open. So I took like poli-sci classes and I took philosophy classes and um
Great.
yeah, so I was kind of I think I chose WashU because I knew it was a great school. So that
Hmm.
no matter what I studied, I knew I'd be getting a good education. Um and I wasn't in the position when I was that age to target what I wanted the way that I think people who go to conservatories are able to do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What sort of wise advice that your mom gave you? I mean, that's like life advice. Most parents I would think would be don't fall, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she
And you,
was like that too. You like watch your
sure.
step, but
Sure. But I think there's something, maybe I'm reading too much into that quote from your mom, but that there's something about life where you're always going to fall. You're always going
Mm,
to have some failures, and how far you fall maybe has actually makes a difference. So
sure.
that's interesting. So going into WashU, you didn't necessarily have, you had all of these wonderful interests, but not necessarily one, you couldn't at that point in your first year anticipate that you'd have a career in anything. Is that right? Or even in acting?
Correct. I had no idea what I
Yeah.
was gonna do. And
Yeah.
I am half Asian. So my my mom's side, I've comes from like army people and doctors. And so I think especially for my grandfather, I was getting a lot of pushes to be a doctor or be a lawyer
Oh,
or be something, practical and useful for the world. And I
fair.
rejected it. I said, no, thank you.
I'm going to fall on this side of the wall.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
that makes sense. Oh, that's nice. So, how did you, when you were here at WashU, in what ways did you get involved or engaged? Extracurricularly or curricularly? You said you took poli-sci classes and literature classes.
Yeah. Well, extracurricularly, I started off by taking, do you guys still have pre-orientations?
Oh, yeah.
Prios? Okay,
Hmm.
so I took the improv Prio, which I'm not sure if that exists anymore, but
I don't know that it does.
okay.
It
I think it
sounds
might
somewhat
have
foreign to me,
I
but
think it
yes.
might have dissolved. But it was great. It was at the time, and I think they're still all there. But there were three improv groups when I went, and so it was all three improv groups working together to welcome new students. And I totally fell in love with that community. And so I auditioned and I ended up joining Suspicious of Whistlers, which is
Yep.
was at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, but was the only long form improv group on campus. The other two were short form. And
Yep.
my info might be wrong, but I think Carl might
No,
be doing long form now or something.
sure.
But yeah, I like totally fell in love with it. And then that group became my home and my community and my family. And we're
Nice.
still really close. And yeah, so that was like the majority of my extracurricular time.
Nice, nice. And
Yeah.
then, did you find that shall I say, in your later life, did you find that having this sort of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary background in so many different fields, does that help give you a leg up in a sense in terms of what you do now as an actor?
I think it makes me really unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think uniqueness in an artistic field is an asset.
Mm-hmm.
I think I come from a place where I analyze text differently than somebody who didn't study literary theory would
Right.
analyze a text, or somebody who didn't study French, or somebody who, yeah. But that's all to say I have a specific skill set, and I also lack other specific skill sets that like somebody who went to conservatory might.
Right.
But I learned those things on the job and I learned those things. And I think, being in improv helped make me really adaptable and really
Sure.
taught me about play. And having this broad perspective, I think also kind of helps me understand that there are many different tools to attacking a single problem, that you don't just need one pedagogy to understand any one thing.
Yeah, yeah. I find this so fascinating because it's a refrain I've heard from multiple interviews so far, and I've only done three or four
Mm,
podcast interviewees because It's like you said, not a specific conservatory program, but it gives you this broad basis to, I guess, for lack of a better term, you're just curious. You're curious and you know how to study and you know how to kind of dig deep into perhaps a character or a topic or whatever it might be because of your, in your case, comparative arts background. What am I putting words in your mouth, or is that
No, I think that's
fair to
great.
say?
I think that's great. And I also like, I think I'm talking a lot about the things that I studied outside of the PAD, but the classes that I took with the acting teachers at the PAD have been so deeply important and also pivotal in my acting capabilities and the things that I bring to jobs.
Sure,
So I
sure.
would
And the,
not discount that at all.
oh no, no, I'm not. I wasn't implying that you were. No, I think it's great that you have this sort of all these different experiences while you were at WashU. It's fantastic. So you mentioned play, and I gotta say, personally, I'm really interested in this. I teach a creativity class called Design and Creativity, and it's basically broken down into some 5 or 6 different sections. We do a section on failure, we do a section on collaboration, and we do a section on play and the importance of play and how play is often perceived as a dalliance or something that's sort of what you do outside of work, but it's actually quite important. And what jumped out to me from your website, and again, this is sort of exemplary of your interdisciplinary background, is you're also a photographer. And you mentioned that in your sessions, you like to focus on play. Can you tell me, with your lens, what does play mean in your line of work?
Yeah. Well, I photograph a lot of artists. So I'll do headshots and portraits for actors, playwrights, producers, directors, pretty much anybody in my particular field so far who
Sure.
needs professional representation in the form of an image. And the thing about a camera is that like everybody gets uncomfortable in front of cameras. And I think that might be different for
Yes.
people of a younger generation who grew up with camera phones and TikTok and Instagram. But for people of my generation and older, I think it's a really uncomfortable experience.
Yeah.
And so what I find is that play and feeling like you are playful within your body. So when you're taking a picture and people are uncomfortable, play and reminding people that they're in their bodies and that they are playful within their bodies is so important to getting a picture that looks like them. Because
Yeah.
most of the time, I think people freeze up, they get really tense. We want to look like what we see, and
Sure.
our version of beauty or our version of hotness or confidence that looks like an external thing because you're not
Yeah.
used to seeing yourself when you're most confident or when you're most present. And so
Interesting.
it's to kind of get people out of that struggle with themselves and into their own bodies and into their own hearts, souls,
Yeah.
play, joy. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
themselves, their true full selves.
Nice. And there seems like there's an improv aspect to that. I've heard improv described as sort of getting out of your own head. So maybe there's some of that that's necessary to getting an authentic photo. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Nice.
agree with that. The way in for me with photography is more like, and I think this is about like playfulness and looking like an idiot, which you have to do at improv. Like I
Yes.
ask people to dance to
Oh,
start off, and
nice.
it's so
Yes.
uncomfortable and everybody hates it. And by the end, like we're in the room together, we've like found each other. Uh,
Totally.
and so in that sense, yeah, I think it is like you need the improv spirit.
I love that. I love that. There's a photographer I mentioned in my creativity class so much that I'm sure my students are over it. But there's a guy named Norman Seeff who photographs some of the most amazing artists, actors, musicians, even scientists who landed a Mars rover on Mars.
Wow.
He, in a very similar way, sets up this sort of he has his work is very authentic. You can tell from the photos that the person is disarmed to a point that it's their true selves that comes through in the camera and
Mm,
in the photos. And he thankfully, at least for someone like me who studies creativity, he records a lot of these sessions. So he talks to people about all these important creative aspects of themselves and from big failures they've had, that type of thing. And it's this really wonderful kind of playful dialogue that
mm,
I think comes through in the photos, and I'm sure it does in your photos as well.
mm.
Anyway, Sorry, you touched on a visual arts form, so I was all like,
I know it's
we've
great. It's
we've gone on
awesome.
this little sidetrack here.
I love it.
So you graduated WashU with a BA in comparative arts. I have in my notes. Hopefully that's still true.
Still true.
It's still true. And then what happened for Sasha Diamond? Where did you go from there?
Man, I moved back home. I came back to New
Man,
York. Oh man, it was a rough, like, I think when you graduate, you're kind of afloat for a minute, unless you are somebody who's smart enough to like get a job straight out of school. But if you're
no.
me, I was like, I was still trying to live on the wall. I hadn't like
Yeah,
fallen off the wall any direction yet.
nice.
And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up being a literary intern at a theater called the Women's Project. So I was kind of meshing my two interests. I was, around theater, but I wasn't being an actor, so it was safe. And so I would read scripts for them and I would help them sort of vet submissions for their programs.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and I also assisted with some of the productions that they had, just in terms, like I was like a reader on book for when an actor needed to call line.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. And I
Oh,
ended up doing that. And I worked the box office at Barrow Street Theater, which no longer exists. And I also gave Sex in the City tours. I was on a bus
no
giving
way.
tours. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was really fun.
Nice. You said
Yeah.
these were bus tours?
They still exist. They are bus
Nice.
tours. They're 4 hours long, and it's like 55 international tourists that you're wrangling as they like drink and like take pictures and have a great time.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I ended up taking a monologue class just for fun because I was like, well, maybe I'll continue this interdisciplinary thing. I'll like do the lit, I'll be involved, but I'm not going to be an actor. I think I was scared probably. And I took a monologue class for fun. And that teacher was kind enough to say, listen, I think if you don't pursue this, you're going to be really upset. You're just
Mm,
going to regret it. And I was like, I think you're right. And then I ended up through friends, I found this theater called the Flea Theater. And
mhm.
at the time they had a youth acting company, not youth, but like an acting company for, let's say, emerging actors. So everybody
Sure.
was like in their 20s. And I joined that company, which was called The Bats at the time. And I did a production with them. And that production put me in contact with a bunch of other people. And so then I started working pretty consistently, which was very lucky. And after a lot of working consistently, I found a manager. And after a lot more working consistently, I found an agency. And yeah, here we
Wow.
are.
Here
Yeah.
you Here we are. I think you just catapulted over a whole bunch of stuff, but yes. Here we are all of a
Here we
sudden.
are.
I mean, I gotta say, it sounds like you're sort of way in at least into your now flourishing career was through theater, through the Flea
Mhm.
Theater, but you've also worked with some top-notch directors doing everything from off-Broadway to Broadway work. Has that continued for you? Is that one reason that you're based in New York versus LA, that you can kind of keep a toe in that water in your
That's
career?
a great question. I would love to say that it's like a really logical answer like that, but honestly, my family's over here and my partner's family's over here, and my partner's family, his sister has kids, and so at this point, it's like
Yeah,
our families are really important.
of course. And as they
Um,
should be. Absolutely.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also I will say the experience that I have had, and I think the reason that I've been working in a way that I have been working has been community and has been people.
Hmm.
And I was able to find that in New York and find it with a speed that I think was normal for New York, but compared to LA feels really fast.
Ah,
My friends who are in LA have expressed that it's really hard to find community, or the points of access when you're just starting out seem fewer. There are more closed doors than open ones.
sure.
And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that like there is theater in New York and a lot of the theater is really grassroots, and
Sure.
people don't ignore the grassroots theater. It has a validity to it. Um,
Sure.
you
Sure.
can still meet quote unquote important people or people who can move the needle for you, or whatever stupid industry terms.
Yeah. No, even geographically, I mean, New York is sort of much more condensed versus Los Angeles. It's probably easier to feel more alone in that environment in LA
Yeah.
versus New York. So,
I
That makes
think that's
perfect
it,
sense.
honestly. Yeah, I wonder if you squished LA into one tiny spot, if it actually would end up being kind of the same, you know?
Yeah, we're gonna try that. We're gonna squish LA into a small city block, see what happens. No, this is fascinating. So you continued, it seems, and I'm just inferring from your resume that you kept going to auditions, you kept, beating on that door and getting either work in theater but also in film. How did you break into film and TV, or was it a simultaneous thing?
It was not simultaneous. I think they are different, at least at the time that I was working
Sure.
and coming into those things. They felt like two very different arenas.
Mm.
So where I was making headway in theater, it felt like all the doors to television were still totally closed. And there were two things that happened. I got a manager, which was really helpful. And I took an on-camera acting class with a guy named Bob Krakauer, who is fantastic, and a lot of New York actors take his class.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was kismet or timing or the gods or if it was legit his name on my resume, but after I took that class, I started booking television. So,
Ah.
or maybe it was the skills I learned. Maybe, I don't know. Give it any number of those
I love
things.
how that's at the bottom of the list. Or maybe it was just what I learned. Yes.
Oh, maybe possible.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there are so many more things in the industry than just an actor's ability. You know, like I think there's luck and there's
Sure.
timing and there is resumes. So after that point, I did start working in television and then it's kind of a similar thing where, once your resume beefs up a little bit, you get better opportunities and
Sure.
this
Yeah.
sounds so it just sounds so stupid. That's
No,
like such
no. I think it's how the business works, honestly. It's like,
yeah.
people are like, you got to get Sasha. You got it for this role. This is perfect for Sasha Diamond. I can imagine those conversations happened for sure. It's not all that different in the design realm I've
Hmm.
done a lot of regional theater work, and one director works with another and they're like, that Rob guy, he's decent. So
Yeah.
here I'll downplay my own career because I feel the kinship with you about, yeah, that I might have learned something along the way, but it's also this fickle business. No, it's interesting to sort of it's I think an example again of what you called in your New York world, your community,
Hmm.
your the community being small, the community being condensed is an advantage. Well, this is fantastic. So you got a lot of work, film and TV work after that. A Krakauer you mentioned,
Yes, Bob
uh,
Krakauer.
Bob Krakauer. I think isn't there I believe there's a famous climber, a mountain climber named Krakauer as well.
Oh,
But yeah, so you
it's got to
climbed
be
that
Bob.
exactly. You climbed that mountain. And I mean, I don't need to tell you what your resume says, but you've been a recurring star, a guest star, a co-star, a featured guest in a lot of TV and film work, which I think is just really wonderful that you've managed to keep that going.
Thank you.
Is there anything about, and the answer quite honestly maybe no, but is there anything about your experience at WashU or a skill set that you may lean on in both times of great fruitful work and also times, maybe COVID, for example, when things were maybe slowing down in terms of your opportunities? What about your WashU education maybe is something that you look on or use moving forward?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I think honestly, I think nothing can prepare you for the ups and downs of this industry.
Sure.
When it's down, it's really down. And when it's up, people forget to be happy that it's up.
Mm,
So
it's
it's like
fair. Yeah.
it can be a really big roller coaster ride. I will say I have like a blind when it gets really bad, the thing that keeps me going is this like blind confidence, this
Mm.
blind, stupid, makes no sense confidence.
Can you explain that a bit? I mean, like,
Yeah,
how do you get there?
I don't know. You become a narcissist and you go insane. Like I don't you like totally lie to yourself is really what happens. You know what it is actually is and there's I hope she doesn't kill me for this, but there's you look to other artists and
Hmm.
you find other points that you can remember in your own memory or that you can see online if you find like a video. Other points when other people have pushed into something extraordinary
Yeah.
and then you allow yourself to be moved by that is my experience. So for example, one that listeners can access is I'm terrible with names. I think her name is Kayla something.
Kayla Settle. Uh-huh.
The woman who sings that song in The Greatest Showman, that
It,
This Is Me song.
yeah.
There's like a rehearsal video of her singing this song where she talks about it in this like little pre-video, and then you see the video itself. But she says that she's like they're presenting the song for the first time to the rest of the cast, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's terrified. And the song is all about owning your space and stepping out. And it's a big song. And she's standing in front of Hugh Jackman and a bunch of other A-list celebrities, and she's terrified. And she's standing behind a music stand for the first part of the song, and halfway through or kind of early on, she makes the decision to step
Mm-hmm.
out from from behind the stand and to sing the song in the context of the room. And the room like explodes. Like the
Nice.
everybody else rises up to meet her, and like, and it's this moment of this artist choosing to lean in an insane position of vulnerability, and then everybody else like rising to meet her and to hold her in that, and that the whole room becomes something magical. Um, so,
Wow.
and this is the one that is gonna kill me for, but Anna, so I think all the professors were like cajoled into doing a performance when I was there, like a
Yes,
cabaret.
I've heard about this. Yes.
Oh, you have?
Cajoled, threatened, coerced.
Yeah, some series of manipulation, but they all agreed, so it's their fault. And Anna did. I'm a huge fan of Anna Pledges at any point in time, but
Yeah.
we'd never seen her perform before, obviously. And she did think it was that song from that musical where it's
Sure.
like mama's coming up. I'm not a musical theater person. It was some song about some like pursuit against all odds.
Got it.
And like the fire in her face and like in my memory she's like a flame,
Yeah.
when she's performing, and it like was shocking. It was just so shocking, like all the power that Anna Pileggi has in her
Yeah.
body just like coming out
Yeah.
in this moment. Um
In her 4'10" body. Yes.
exactly, yeah, in this tiny, and it's not surprising if you know Anna that like, yeah, but
I'm
it
guessing her
was
age. She's going to get mad at me if I'm off when it comes to that. Or her, not her age, but her height. Excuse me. I'm
right.
not going to guess her age. That's not going to happen. But this is so fascinating to me. Sorry, keep going. But this idea that you have to be vulnerable to, you have to take a chance in order to succeed, if that makes sense.
That's exactly it. And
Yeah.
I think like because it can get so hard, because this industry, like, no, I think the blind confidence comes in because you have to believe that you're worth your own time
Yeah.
when nobody's telling you that it's worth it, you know?
Y- Uh,
And people who have told you in the past that you're worth it are the things that will keep you going when nobody else is saying it now. Or like
hmm
having seen other people choose that, like decide to make that choice is
hmm
what keeps you going when, and I say now because the industry for me at least has been really slow.
Yeah.
Like my resume might look great, but for the last like year, especially post strike, it's been really, really slow. So right now I'm particularly in a position where, I'm having to confront whether or not to keep going. And I think,
Sure.
you do when you love something as much as when you're an artist and it's like part of your bones, you keep going no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
But you do come against this wall of like, is it worth it? Am I worth it? Is my presence here adding anything
Hmm.
to the world or even to my own life? Like
Sure.
it's hard. It can get really hard.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
you're hitting all the, I mean, I've felt I'm 53 now at my age there, I believe I had a wise teacher of mine. I've had many wise teachers. I've been very lucky. One in particular said that you live your life in plateaus and
Mm,
climbs, that sometimes you seem to be coasting a bit and you're on a plateau and things are, cooking, but you're not necessarily climbing. And then, you hit a climb that's like, whew, this is going to be hard, but it's necessary for me to make this ascent.
huh.
And so, this is, I think, exemplary of all artists, quite honestly, that
Mm.
honestly, this is an audio only podcast, but I got goosebumps when you told that story about singing in front of Hugh Jackman. I think I'm reminded of that moment that Aretha Franklin did where she dropped the coat. Do you know the one I'm talking about? And
No.
it was at the Kennedy Center Honors, and she sang this song, and she at one point she had a fur, it might have been a coat or a shawl, but regardless, at a certain point she just stood up and dropped the coat, and the crowd went nuts. Like it
Uh,
was just like, boom, here I am. I'm gonna be, my full self. This is what, I don't know that that was rehearsed. She just decided to do it. And yeah, it's necessary, I think, for an artist to feel like they can be vulnerable. And what is is it the Wayne Gretzky quote about you miss 100% of the shots you never take?
right.
Or maybe Michael Jordan. I'm sure that someone's
I don't
sports nut will
know.
tell me which athlete that was. But back to our small nerdy drama realm here. So yeah, this is fascinating to me. So you've been so honestly quite successful in everything you're doing, and it seems like you have the right amount of jet fuel to get to the next place. And being somewhat self-reflective, I think, is an important part of any artist's journey. But it's just delightful to chat with you about all this stuff, and I quite honestly can't wait to see what you do next. I get really kind of silly excited about things like these types of things. But
I do too. I mean,
um,
we could, this could be a 3 hour long
yes,
podcast
it
at
could be,
this
it could be,
point.
but it won't be. If you don't mind, I want to ask you one question. I can't say that I ask every guest this question, but I like to ask artists like yourself and alumni of WashU. Um, if you could go back in time, if I were to grant you a time machine and go back in time to, let's say, your first year at WashU, 18, 19-year-old Sasha Diamond, what advice would you whisper in your own ear at that moment? Like, is there anything that you would want to tell yourself? It doesn't have to be profound. It could be like, watch out for that burrito.
Don't eat that burrito that
Don't eat
Thursday.
that food poisoning wasn't fun. Like, I think we all learned something about not just what we did, but what we had wished we had done.
Mm.
And what would your advice to yourself be? Take as long as you need to.
Yeah, that's tricky because it's that time travel question, right? Like if I said anything, would I have made any different choices? And I feel
Oh,
like,
I'm not saying that your younger self listens to you.
but I think I say that because I think as haphazard as it was, I think I made the right moves. And so I think I think I tell myself to lean in. That I
Hmm.
think, when you're 18 or 19, you're really used to everybody else telling you how to succeed, everybody else telling you what you should or shouldn't do. Even like that you have to know which side of the wall to fall on, which might be a great piece of advice, but that's somebody else's advice.
True.
So I think I would have encouraged myself to trust that the instincts that I had, the passions that I had, the interests that I had, even if they didn't amount to conservatory degree or a degree that you could put on a piece of paper easily,
Hmm.
right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Even if it didn't follow one particular laid out plan,
Hmm.
it was not wrong, right? It was actually the most correct choice that I could have made for myself. I think
Yeah,
in terms of like failure and there's so much structure in schooling and there's so much this is the rubric, this is how you succeed, this is how you do
yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I think I was so afraid of failing or doing the wrong thing. And then when you move into an arts field, that rubric goes away and the structure goes away and you're suddenly out there without a net, not knowing what success looks like or how to get there. And I wonder if there was something I could have said to my 18-year-old self to help me release that structure sooner, to go like, if you're not a straight A student, that's great. What else are you doing that's making you full? What else are
Hmm.
you doing that builds you as a person? And those things are actually the things that are going to carry you through the next decades of your life, are the things that bring you happiness and bring you love and bring you joy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really, really wonderful. So great to hear that. Honestly, it's just, if you think of it, and I've tried to make this case with students that demanded, you mentioned the word structure, I think, that that demanded the kind of structure they had in high school. And I'm like, but no, college is this liminal place between high school, fully structured, everything, there's a bell that rings and you know where to go. And, there's pre-study guide or pre-exam study guides and things like that to, as you said, the real world where it's like, you're out there without a net, you're trying to navigate. I just think it's so, there's this implication with the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, that implies that life is a straight line, but it's actually, it's very much a circuitous journey. So, and yours has been that way, but in I think a wonderfully fruitful, and I want to say like just wonderfully optimistic future for you that I think hopefully your WashU experience served you well. But
that's very kind. And I also want to say that, like, I think that my PAD teachers in particular were the ones saying, like, get out of the straight A mindset. Like, you're all smart. We know you're all smart, but what makes you full? What makes you
yes,
you? And that is particular to the PAD. That does not. Well, I had a couple of professors that were like really invested in my humanity as a person that were not in the PAD. But for the most part, my experience of finding that guidance and finding people who would challenge my need for that structure were the PAD. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that's part of the reason that I love those professors so much is that they began that journey. They started pushing me that way,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, as my creativity students have heard me say many times that, your journey up until acceptance, let's say to WashU and landing in college, wherever it might be, is how intelligent are you? And then after that point, it should be, how are you intelligent? What can you bring to the world? You specifically.
Get out. That's great.
Yeah, I stole that from Sir Ken Robinson, but shout out to
That's really good.
the late great Sir Ken Robinson. It's been delightful to chat with you, Sasha. Thank you so much for your time and for kind of it's a treat and an honor to sort of elevate and celebrate you on this podcast. And like I said, we got to do this again sometime because I'm sure in the next 10 years you're just going to be taken off in whatever field you decide to sort of focus your sights on.
That's really kind. And mostly I'd pop back in just for more conversation. This has been awesome.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, Sasha, thanks for being on the PAD podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Just some great wisdom from Sasha Diamond on leaning in to life, having the belief that you are worth your own time. And in that spirit, I wanted to share with you a little bit of the rehearsal audio from Kiela Settle singing The Greatest Showman. Enjoy.
Benj and Justin have just written this new song called This Is Me. And we knew that it was going to be the anthem of the film, but no one had heard it before. And no one had heard Kiala sing it live. Kiala, who I didn't even want to come out from behind the music stand.
I didn't.
I kept saying to her, just step out, because this is your moment and you have to step out into the ring, metaphorically, because that's what you're doing, and you got to stand right there in front of everyone and just belt this out.
And I didn't want to. In fact, I stood behind that music stand until the day of that presentation. There was a moment in the song that I actually was so scared that I had to actually grab Hugh's hand so that I had somebody to hold on to. And then we got to the end of the number, and all I remember is just deafening applause. It was a sort of otherworldly experience.
It was one of those moments that will stay with me the rest of my life. Unfortunately, we filmed it.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down, 'cause I know that there's a place for us. For we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, when the sin that want to drown them out,
All right, my many thanks to Sasha Diamond for joining the PAD podcast. Very, very grateful to her for her time and her candor about her time at WashU. If you would like to be an interviewee on the PAD podcast, just reach out. Would love to do it. All right, have a great rest of your day and look forward to the next episode.